Welcome back to the Strong Opinion Hibs podcast. This is episode 65. As always, I am Jack, and tonight I'm joined by Charlie and Calvin. I couldn't care less about how you two are because we've got a special guest, Gordon, a big Hibs fan, and I'm sure a few of you heard him on Headbangers before as well. So thank you for coming on, Gordon, and how are you, mate?
Thanks for having me here. I'm very, very well, considering everything that's going on with Hibs. I'm in good spirits.
Aye,
how are you all doing?
Aye, and I'll ask Charlie and Calvin, since I may as well be nice now.
So
how are you two lads?
So you do care, aye? Well, I'm all right, mate. All things considered, I think looking forward to getting some of my views off my chest and moving on with my life, because Hibs are shite. So looking forward to it.
And Calvin, what about yourself, pal?
I'm upset that's 2 weeks in a row. Charlie stole my part, and then you stole my part as well. So I might have to start copywriting that. But nah, a bit down in the dumps, to be honest with you, mate. A bit fed up with it all. I've certainly felt better than I feel right now.
Yeah, well, I'm all right. I mean, obviously, just really upset with 2 derby losses in a row. But I've got some exciting things happening potentially. But keeping that under my cap just now. Hopefully it all gets sorted in the week. Some exciting things on the horizon. But we'll just jump right into it. And I think the only really place to start is obviously our Scottish Cup semi-final defeat to the Hearts. Obviously went to Hampden. I think expectations were maybe not that high in the first place anyway, but we lost 2-1 to Hearts. And I think we'll start off, as always, with the lineup. It was a bit of an odd one, and since you're the guest, Gordon, I'll come to you first, mate. What was your reaction to Sean Maloney's starting 11?
It wasn't a great reaction, to be honest. It was a bit of I think everybody's reaction was pretty similar. Like, what's he playing at? It's absolutely bizarre. To see it when it came out, I think James Scott obviously was the obvious one that people picked out as why is he put James Scott in here? He's showed nothing so far. It's the only game of the season left that means anything. What is he playing at? And obviously we'll go into talking about like his performance and other people's performances, I imagine. But it was just a bit bizarre. And I wasn't really sure, as usual, when it comes out, when Maloney's been in charge, I wasn't really sure what, like, he would know the formation. He plays the same formation every time. He seems set in his ways. That's how he wants to play. He wants the back three, he wants the wing backs. I get it. But it was like Stevenson was there. And I was like, is he playing in midfield? Is he playing left back? Clark has been playing left wing back. Is he maybe going to switch him to the right? He just, like, so like, he couldn't really tell exactly what was going on. But I wasn't feeling great about our chances before the lineup, and I certainly wasn't feeling great after seeing the lineup.
Yeah, I definitely would agree with that. Calvin, what are your thoughts on the lineup, mate?
That's just sort of echo what everyone's saying so far. Disappointed, to be honest with you. I think that obviously before the game, when you see James Scott's name on it sticks out like a sore thumb, and you're just like, what? Like, is Melkerson taking a knock or something like that? Like, what? And like, I understand last week, Melkerson didn't have a great game against Hearts, but I don't think the service to him was that good either. And he, like we said last week, he did look like a young guy. He did look like a teenager when he was playing up against Halkett and that. But I thought that was just the style we were playing, long balls up front and things like that. I thought if we could have maybe got it into his feet this time, I think we might have seen a wee bit more from him, especially if he'd added like Henderson and stuff in there to help him out a wee bit. I was glad to see Porteous back in the squad. Obviously, I thought the bringing McGinn back into the squad was odd. I didn't see that coming. I didn't see that coming from anywhere. And I think Henderson's probably the strangest one to me as well, because I don't know what's going on with Henderson this year. Like, he's in, out. He's in the team, he's out the team. Just for me, and I say I took a bashing on Twitter for saying it, but I think the consistency in the team is probably one of the reasons as to why where we find ourselves in the league. And I know he's had a lot of injuries and things like that, but with the players he's got available, for me, seeing, you know, a different team most weeks says something. And I think it says the person in charge isn't entirely sure how to get the best tune out of the players he's got. And I think he's trying as many different sort of types of players and different systems as he can to try and I don't know, find a win or make it tick. But to me, I find it really, really bizarre. And I think I think one of the things that was so good about us last year is you could almost pick the team, like, you know, you knew what it was to get away most weeks. But this year, I mean, it's crazy for me, really, really crazy.
Charlie?
I think contrary to popular belief among Hibs fans, I was actually pretty happy to see that he sort of swapped some of the players that were maybe a wee bit out of form last week. I think dropping Muller was a good idea from Maloney, because I don't think he was great last week. Don't think he's been great since he signed, to be honest, but he's obviously coming off the back of a full season in the MLS, and I think we'll probably see the best out of him next season. But James Scott was a strange one. Henderson was a strange one. McGinn was a strange one. It just feels like he just press randomize on Football Manager and hope for the best. Obviously, seeing him go two up front, well, it looked like it was two up front for what Henderson Henderson and Scott. That's all right. Like I'm okay with him going two up front if he's going to play people that have got a bit of something about them. I don't think James Scott has proved anything so far, and obviously we'll come, as Gordon said, we'll come to talk about his performance. But I was a wee bit happy with the team. I don't think I was disappointed. Well, I was a wee bit disappointed. Also a wee bit happy because Maloney showed that he isn't scared to change it. I think if he'd went with the same sort of team as last week, if Rocky had started, there would have been an outcry, and obviously he dropped him. So I think he's learned from what he said in his after-match interview last week to change the team. But it's still a bit strange to me that he just doesn't have a consistent lineup. I know we're struggling with injuries and what have you, but it would have been nice to see even Jasper start, or something like that. And it was a bit of a strange one.
Yeah, I've got to agree. I think personally, from my point of view, I looked at my heart sort of sank a wee bit, because I thought it's like he's just picked names out the hat. McGinn was a surprise for me. I think I knew McGinn was going to come back eventually. I know he's been dealing with injury, and I knew McGinn was going to come back. I just don't think that was the game for him. It's too much of a big game for him to put him back after he's not been that great this season anyway, and he's coming back for a long-term injury as well. I just don't think it's the game you put him in for. I think Muller was rightfully dropped. I think he's been a bit underwhelming, but I think we're going to see the player that Muller is next season. I think we're going to maybe get that player out of him. I don't know, maybe we might not, but I'd like to give him the benefit of the doubt, and hopefully will. But yeah, I think Miller's been underwhelming. The only one I say is I really wanted Jasper to start. I think Jasper's directness would have helped us, I feel. And Melkerson, he got bullied a bit by Hearts, but at the same time, you don't really have that many strikers just now. You've got Nisbet. Really, it's him and Scott are only out-and-out strikers. So really, if you look at choice to do, I know Melkerson got bullied, but I agree with Calvin, he didn't get that much service. You've got to look at it and go, it's a sort of catch-22. Do you put James Scott on who we know is not that great? Or do you put Melkerson in, who obviously got bullied a bit, but we know can just get those little moments of magic? So I wouldn't want to be the one that had to make the choice. But yeah, I think we'll touch on Scott later. I wasn't actually, all that put out by Scott's performance, to be honest. But yeah, I think it was just a strange team. There was some place where I thought good, he's made the right choice. Like I thought it was great that Louis got put, but I think Louis should have started in the derby at Tynecastle for my money. And Louis put in a fantastic performance. But yeah, it was just a really strange team. And it was like he sat on the bus and went, right, lads, let's gather round, and started picking names at the hat. You're in the starting team. You're in the starting team. So I think that's it. But we'll move on now, and we'll.
I was just going to add one wee hang, just on my point, I forgot to add was that if you look at the Hearts lineup, it's the exact same lineup that beat us 3-1 the week before, and I just think that consistency, sort of in selection or player selection lineup, like those Hearts players are well drilled. Like they'll know what they're doing. You know what I mean? They'll know how each other play. I think that's a big difference from us, like putting new bodies in there and stuff like that. I just feel like the teams, like I said last week, that the teams never really had a chance to gel this year at all.
Yeah, no, I think you're spot on, mate. But I think looking at that, I think Hearts under Nielsen that's what's got them at third. They're well organised. There's a consistency there. They've got a they're quite strong in quite the key areas of the pitch, basically, I'd say. So I look at it from a balanced point of view, which I know is hard, but I've got to say it. Nielsen's got Hearts to third for a reason. You've got to look at it. He's got them a third in a Scottish Cup final for a reason. They're a good manager. He's a decent manager, and they're well drilled under him, and they're consistent. And a bit like us under Ross, I'd say, where you knew what you were getting when we came third, except obviously they're going to do it a lot more confidently than we did. But I think it's them under Nielsen, to me, is very similar to us under Ross in that last season where we got consistency in the lineup. You knew what you were getting, and it was getting consistent results. I think that's it for me. But we'll move on and talk about the first half. And obviously, I think Hearts start on the front foot. We should have had we'll talk about, I think that's something Charlie will discuss. We'll go back to the penalty claim. But Hearts started on the front foot, and in the 16th minute, obviously, Sims puts them 1-0 up. I think, for me, we made it look far too easy for Hearts for the first goal. They've been killing us with that ball in behind, and Sims is just allowed to absolutely wreck us effectively. And then, obviously, 5 minutes later, Kingsley scores that wonder strike, puts Hearts 2-0 up. Again, I think we just made it too easy for them. They were running rings around us, and there's maybe an argument. I know it's a really good strike for Kingsley. There's an argument that Macy maybe should have been a bit more aware of it, could have done better. And that's it. I know it's a really good strike, but I think if that had been a Hibs player at the other end, would Craig Gordon been a bit more aware of it? Possibly. But I think it was a brilliant goal for Kingsley. You've got to give him it. And at that point, I looked at it and thought, oh dear. I mean, I thought, are we going to look at a repeat of 5-1 here? At that point, when Hearts are 2-0 up within 20 minutes, you're looking at it going, how bad is this going to be? Then Chris Cadden manages to get a goal back for us. I think it was great play for us. And we've been saying it all season, just get balls into the box. That's what we do. And Cadden manages, in the bit, obviously there's a bit of a scramble, and Cadden just manages to stick it away. And we get the goal back. And I think after that, there's a slight momentum shift. So those are my sort of thoughts and points in the first half. Charlie, I'll come to you first, mate. What were your thoughts on the first half?
I actually thought we started pretty well. I thought we looked to move the ball pretty well, and I think we should have had a penalty. To be fair, I think the ball bounces onto Kingsley's arm, and John Beaton just waves it away without even giving it a second thought. And surprise, surprise, there's 2 games at Hampden. He's reffed against Hibs, and he's not gave 2 Stonewall penalties. So I sort of expected that when I seen he was reffing, that we were probably going to get some decisions go against us. But I think onto their first goal, I think it's shocking defending from McGinn. I think I don't know what he's playing at, but he just puts it into Sims's path. 99 times out of 100, that goes into Rosette. That is one of those goals that only happens to Hibs. It only happens to Hibs when we're playing Hearts. If James Scott tries that, it goes into the crowd. If any other player on that team tries it, it goes into the crowd. But they obviously get the rub of the green once again in a derby. Second goal, I think I actually disagree with you, Jack, on the whole Macy thing. I think it's just struck that well that like the way it bends, it looks like it's going out the pitch and it bends in. I don't think there's a keeper on the planet that saves that. And it's rare that I disagree with you, mate. It's a rare occurrence on this podcast. But
it really is. No, I think fair enough.
I think
was nitpicking there, to be fair.
I think somebody probably could have ran out quicker to try and defend it. But it's a well worked free kick for Hearts. It catches us off guard. I hate being positive about them. I really do, but it's a well worked free kick and it's in the net. But you're right on that we get the goal back at a good time, like straight away, pretty much we kick off. I think the desire from Stevenson to win the ball is fantastic. That's what you get with Stevenson. Anyone who's claiming he's past it can sort of watch that game and sort of change your opinion on that, because there's no way that he's finished. For my money, Hibs captain should be. That's leadership on the park, the desire to win that ball, desire to even potentially ride a bad tackle trying to win the ball is fantastic. I think the ball for Henderson as well, class. Like just the way to dink it over and just give him that option. Cadden's finish is brilliant. Gets the second bite of the cherry and just hammers it home. And I think that was really all I could say about the first half, mate. I think you're right. When it went to I was fearing the worst day. I was working on Saturday, so I watched the game back in its entirety after sit on Saturday night just to see what it was like. And when it went 2-0, my heart sank a wee. Obviously, I knew the final result, but you are thinking when you see 2-0 that this could be another 5-1. It could be worse. Like going 2-0 down on the Edinburgh Derby is never a good sign for anyone. But I was happy that we were able to reply that quick.
Yeah, absolutely. I think just before I come to Calvin, I think on the Kingsley incident, I think if Rocky's against Aberdeen was a penalty, then that one is as well. Because I was sitting there and I was watching the game with my mum, who knows nothing about football, but my mum could even tell. She said, "Isn't that a penalty, Jack?" And I said, "Yeah, it should have been, but John Beaton's not going to give us that."
It goes back to what Steven Gerrard said when he was Rangers manager about the consistency with referees. And I know Rangers get more decisions than anyone in the country, but he's right. There's no consistency with the refs, and I guarantee you, if that was a Hibs player that done that, they'd have got a penalty. The establishment club gets the establishment bias. So, you're right, mate. Definite penalty.
It was for me. It was a clear cut one for me. But yeah, I certainly try and be biased. I don't blast refs as much as I maybe should, but I say that you can't dwell on it because we didn't get the decision, and that's it. At the end of the day, if you don't get the decision, you don't get the decision. You've just got to play past that. So, Calvin, what are your thoughts on the first half, mate? You're muted.
I think Gordon's trying to speak, so if Gordon wants to jump in before me, that's all right.
I was just going to have a point on the handball incident there. I actually disagree with both. And you're right, Jack. Beaton certainly deserves a hounding because he is atrocious and his bias is clear for everyone to see. But I think his hand is in a natural position by the letter, and I get what you guys are saying, that it's a consistency side of stuff which makes it worse. Like if it's given as a penalty in other games for similar situations, totally. But I think by the rule book and the letter of the law, when I seen it at the time, I was quite far away in the stand, like at the other end, obviously, because it was at the Hearts end, and I was like, I couldn't quite tell. But when I watched the highlight, his arm's down at his side, it's bounced up to his hand. It's almost ball to hand rather than hand to ball. He didn't move his arm in a direction to stop the ball. So I would love to say that it was a penalty, but I don't think it was. I would be screaming for it in the other end, right enough. But if I've got my fair hat on, I don't think it was.
Yeah, I'm in similar minds with Gordon. I don't think it was a penalty either. I think it would have been one of those ones that was incredibly harsh. I think it's just like you say, the ball bubbles up and hit his hand, rather his hand doesn't actually go towards the ball. It is like the ball comes to his hand, and I think it is. I think you might be feeling a bit biased because it's the type of decision that if it was against us, it would have probably been a penalty, which is a frustrating thing. But no, I think I'd have been feeling extremely hard done by. But no, I don't think it was a penalty. I think it was a decent run by Henderson and a decent bit of play. But no, I think it would have been incredibly harsh, to be honest with you. And I know that a lot of the Hibs players reacted in that as well, but nah, I didn't think it was a pen. One of the strangest things was before the match, we actually found out who the folk that can't spell Hearts are. You know, as the song goes, if you can't spell it, apparently they can't spell it. I didn't care if we were playing Miami Heat for a minute there, but probably all I can say about the first half. Maybe just to come on to the Hearts' first goal, I think their game plan was pretty good. Like they said, Nielsen said they knew that we were going to try to play out for the back, get the ball down and pass it about. And they worked on it all week. They said they worked on pressing us high up the pitch for goal kicks and stuff like that. And they take the ball off McGinn well. And to be fair, I think it's a very good finish. I think Hibs got beat by two really, really good pieces of quality. And I think those two bits of quality is a difference between the two teams in the final third. I think that's one of the main differences is they've got quality in the final third, and unfortunately we don't. And I think probably about time Sims was due a goal Because the many times I've seen him play Hibs last 3 or 4 times he's played them, the many chances he's had, the many chances he's missed, he was bound to score one of them. So I think it's a very well taken goal, and I think it's like we've said all season. If you don't buy a ticket, you ain't going to win the lottery. You've got to shoot, and unfortunately for me, it's something Hibs don't do enough. I think it's a very well taken goal. Sort of my thoughts, to be fair.
That's right. Apart from the penalty shout, Gordon, is there anything you wanted to add on about the first half?
I like we touched on with James Scott starting. I actually thought he played relatively well, and he offered something a bit different, but only for maybe half of the first half. I think he went a wee bit missing after a while, and he was just kind of, his positional play wasn't great. He wasn't getting himself into positions to pick up the ball and use his physicality against the Hearts defence. But I think I had that same feeling, and there was a lot of people in the stadium in the Hibs end when the second goal went in, and it was both at the Hibs end where we were sitting, that both those goals went in, and you just looked around and everybody was like, and there was people leaving, which was ridiculous in my opinion, because I mean, what when did the second goal in? 20 odd minutes or something like that. Plenty of time to go, and as we showed, we hit back immediately. And when we did hit back, from that point, when our goal went in, we made it 2-1. We were by far the better team for the rest of the game. Hearts were time wasting from the 40th minute for the first half. Like, it started in the first half. It was quite embarrassing considering, well, obviously what happened in the second half when and I know we'll get on the second half, but the sending off happened. But the two goals that these guys are spot on, that they were both, I want to praise Hearts, but they're both great goals, but at the same time they're preventable before the ball struck. So the first one, we were a bit powder puffing the tackle on the right hand side. Our right hand side, the Boggles and Hanlon are in no man's land, with Sims basically standing in the middle of them. They parted like the Red Sea, and they've given them that opportunity to go through and hit the shot. Great strike. Didn't think the keeper can do anything about it, but picks him up and gets touch tight, doesn't score that goal. And I think we ended up being too high, a higher line in defence a lot in the first half, and the linesman didn't help. The linesman, it was right in front of me running the line in the first half. They had about 3 chances where they were offside. I think what's his name? Who was playing up front with Sims? Boyce was offside a couple of times, and the linesman never gave it. So it's not just beating; it's the lot of them. But we let them get in behind too often. So I think their second goal, and I think, Charlie, you mentioned it there, was they took the free kick, one of them stopped it, rolled it out back to Kingsley, and it's James Scott who should have, it was his position, if you're zonal, he should have been out closing that down, but he did this daft wee jump when you watch the highlights back, where it never looked like he was going to hit the shot. It looked like he crapped himself, trying to close them down. He'd already got the shot away. Absolutely phenomenal strike. I didn't think the keeper had any chance of getting it, but it, again, could have been prevented. He should have been out on top of him, which is frustrating because the rest of the game, we were right on top of them. We never gave them a chance. But it's just 2 minutes, or two incidents for those 2 goals that could have been prevented. That's just a frustrating thing, and I think that's just where we're lacking. We've just not got that for 90 minutes yet.
I think I completely agree, mate. And I think
that's my thoughts on definitely for the first half.
Yeah, I think for me, the first half, it was frustrating, and I think when you look at it, if we don't go 2-0 down and we get the goal back through Karen, it goes 1-1, and we go into the second half, and we had the second half performance that we did, but it's 1-1, I think there's a very realistic chance we win the game. And that's what I sort of said after games. I think we made it a little bit too easy for Hearts to, go and get into those situations that they did have those chances. For me, and I think, Charlie, that's an excellent point, and it's good on Gordon expanding on it, that nobody reacts to it quick enough when Kingsley takes a shot on, just sort of try and block it, if you see what I mean. Someone needs to sort of be aware of that. I think that's what sort of led to that situation. So second half, I'm going to break the second half into sort of the two main talking points, but it's obviously second half, it's a by far improved Hibs performance. I had a lot of my Jambo mates that I know saying, Hearts couldn't really complain if we'd forced extra time, if we'd found the equaliser and forced extra time. I think the players dug deep, they found that something extra, and we just kept pressuring them. And like I said, a lot of Jambos were saying that we were the better team in the second half. And I think to an extent we were the better team in the second half. I thought we were sort of all over them, and Hearts were beginning to look really frustrated as well to me. And you could tell that if we maybe just taken our chances, been that little bit more direct, we could have maybe went and taken something out of the game and got to extra time. I think genuinely we could have forced extra time if we just found that little bit extra. So obviously the first big talking point from the second half is Newell's second yellow. And I think this comes into the debate about should Sean Maloney have subbed him earlier, and I think he should have. You know what Newell's like. I think Newell, he likes to get stuck in there if he needs to get stuck in there. And when he's on a yellow card, and I did say this as well, that if you have a midfielder and a defender on a yellow card, you know to sub them off as soon as you possibly can, as soon as it allows, because you know the risk of them getting a second yellow is pretty, especially with John Beaton, who is very trigger happy with his cards as well. I think John Beaton's given out the most yellow cards in the league or something like that out of any of the referees. There's some crazy statistic out there about John Beaton and giving his cards out. And I think you know to sub Newell off in that situation. You need to take Newell off and bring somebody else on, because our discipline has been one of our issues. I know that's something that Charlie was talking about on Twitter after the game. Our discipline's been one of our main issues. I think at that point that took the wind out of our sails a little bit. So Newell, I think it's reckless from Joe. He knows what he's doing. He goes in there and gets a second yellow and he's off. And I think that sort of killed the momentum for us just a little bit. I don't think it
affected the game. I don't think it
affected us as much as it maybe could have, but I still think it just killed the momentum just a little bit. Because obviously that happens when you get a man sent off. It does kill the momentum a little bit. It doesn't matter how badly.
I almost felt like the players had more desire, because it was like they were even further underdogs and had to dig even deeper to try and get a result.
Absolutely, mate. But I just still think at that point it took the sting out of what we were doing. But we played excellently after it. But yeah, and then obviously the second incident was, of course, or not incident, but talking point was, of course, Gordon's save from Porteous' chance. I think Porteous, that for my money, if that was any other goalkeeper, I think Porteous could have scored there. I mean, there was a lot of Hibs fans, you noticed, sort of in the front rows that were already off their feet thinking that it went in. And Gordon pulls off a fantastic save. And you look at that and you go...
I personally don't think the save's that good.
I actually thought it was a brilliant save.
He pushes it onto the post, which is the reactionary thing to do, right? Which is like, that's what he should do, but it bounces straight back into his arms. Like, it's no
just luck, aye.
Like, James Scott is at the post. Like, I know it's obviously like a split second reactionary time, but I think Craig Gordon's saves get bigged up a little bit too many times for my money. I think he's a fantastic keeper. Like, didn't take anything away from him, but he gets the, like, I genuinely think 99 times out of 100 that goes in the net as well. Like, it's one of those ones that Hearts, anything that could have happened to give him a wee bit of luck on Saturday, it happened. And I just think his reactions were spot on. Like, I think it's a save he makes pretty much every week. Like, I don't think it's that great a save, to be honest.
Personally speaking, I thought it was actually all right, because it's not so much the technique is in, it's a difficult one to make, and that sort of, you had that many bodies in the box that for him it was quite difficult to sort of see. And I'm not trying to praise him in any way, you've got to admit, though, he's one of the best keepers in the league.
He's the best goalie in the country, I think. I think he's the best goalie. I think he should have been our goalie throughout the Euros as well. There's no denying. And I think without him in the stick for Hearts, I think Hearts could possibly be a bottom six side.
I think so.
I think he saved them a lot this season.
He has saved them a lot. And I think you look at it and you go, you know, had Poches scored that then, I think we would have definitely, it would have been a different game. But I think that shows you that how much of an influence I had having Poches in the team. Again, because Poches was in there, he was getting stuck in, he was trying to get chances up the other end as well. And I thought Poches, again, we looked a bit better with Poches in the team for me.
We always do. He instantly makes a team better. He instantly makes the team better. He's the best defender we have. But
fight and that sort of desire that I just think some of the other players don't. He sort of knows what it means, and he wants to just get stuck in there. But I think those are the two instances for me that sort of made the second half. Also, I've got to say, going back in discipline, Josh Campbell was, I think.
You're skipping through quite a few points, mate. I want to talk about that red card, Tate. Let's bring it back to that red card.
Jack just lost connection, so we're just going to keep going with it, and then hopefully he comes back on if his Wi-Fi picks back up. So, Calvin, we'll go back to Joe Neal's red card. So I'll get your thought on it, mate. So what did you think about the red card? Do you think it was the right move for Maloney to keep him on the pitch?
For me, out of the two of them, I think he's our best centre mid. I don't know why, but I'm not that big a fan of Jake Doyle-Hayes. I don't really see what he brings to the team. I think he's very defensive. I don't think he's the one that's going to create anything. So I think when Neil went off, like with the red card, I then thought, Christ, there isn't really anyone to bring on. I felt like it was obviously a needless challenge to make. But if you listen to Maloney's interview after the match, he said that he asked Joe to play on the edge. And I think he had a really good game in the first derby at Easter Road this season. And I think he really got stuck in and stuff. And he sort of acted like a Hibs captain in a way, or acted with a wee bit of authority in that first game. So I thought him trying to put a stamp on the match like that. I think I've seen a lot of people. I've seen a lot of people saying that he should have been taken off. But if they had taken him off, I think I would have probably been a wee bit disappointed. Because I feel like he's that wee bit bite we've got in the middle of the park, personally.
Gordon, you were at the game. Me and Calvin couldn't make it. So was there any views in the stand on whether he should have been kept on, or was it a take him off vibe? Or
no, I didn't really think about it that much, because I suppose in retrospect, in hindsight, because it's John Beaton, because of the way the game was going, because the tackles it was a physical game, it probably would have been the right decision to maybe take him off. It's better swapping him. And I agree with Calvin. He was one of our better midfielders. I would have probably took Jake Doyle-Hayes off first if I was going to take someone off. But because Neil had the yellow card, and it's better to swap him for another player, even if it is Campbell, who I didn't rate, to be honest. It's better having 11 men in the park than 10. But I can kind of get, like Calvin touched on, Sean Maloney mentioned in his interview after the game that he asked him to play on the line, and he did, but he did kind of say that Neil went over the line, which, again, it's a frustrating thing, and this is where, when the whole Maloney out and Maloney in, I can sympathise with him in that situation where he's asked him to do something. He has asked him to go that wee bit extra, but they're professionals. They're playing at a high level. They've got to know where the line is and not cross that line. And I can't remember we're talking more about him being hauled off as a sub, but I just didn't think he needs to make that tackle at all. I don't know about you guys, but I've not seen a decent replay of the incident. All the highlights it was hard for me to see at the time in the stand, but when I've tried to watch in the highlights, it's just like you see him make the tackle and the red card, and then highlights move on. You never see a close-up replay, or I've not seen one. So I find it a bit strange that I can't see that, and then when you first see it, and I've tried to go back through, it's like, I'm not sure he made that amount of contact. I think the Hearts player made a bit of Amelia, but again, the situation is beaten. We know what he's like. You make that tackle. He did come through the behind the side a wee bit, and he didn't have to make it. He's in his own half, the Hearts player. There's no as if he's like gone through to goal to score. He just needs to have a wee bit of bounce about him to say, I'm not going to make that tackle. Just let him hit the pass. I'm already on a yellow card. I'll not get sent off.
I totally agree. I think Harron's going nowhere with the ball, really. Like you said, mate, he's still in his own half. I don't think he needs to make that tackle. But I mean, if that was his first booking, I would have seen brilliant tackle. Like that's what you want to see in a derby. But when you're 2-1 down, we are chasing the game. Like we need to get back into it. To go and do a tackle like that I hate the phrase gives the referee the option, but it did. Like it gave Beaton the option to be like, well, you've already been booked. Sort of a reckless tackle-ish. Like it's no out of this world reckless, but it just gives them that option to flash the second yellow. And obviously going on to the second sort of decision that Beaton sort of went the other way, the Josh Campbell one. Calvin, what did you make of that tackle?
I think that probably could have been a red. Like I think that one was a red. I think that was really reckless. It was. I think Hibs were trying to just show how physical they can be, and I think they were trying to make a point of not getting pushed around. And I think it was probably a bit of frustration as well. But no, I think Campbell was genuinely lucky to stay in the park. I think that was quite a bad challenge, and I think if I'd went the other way, I'd have been looking for a red as well.
Yeah, definitely. Gordon, what was your sort of thoughts when you seen it?
So it was almost right in front of me that it happened, and I seen him steaming in, and both his feet were up. He didn't make a huge amount of contact or very little at all, but it was one of the ends of its intent. And I think he was lucky again, especially who the referee was. I think he was lucky, and you could probably put that one down to ineptitude from Beaton, because if he had seen it properly, 100% he sends him off without even thinking twice. So I reckon he's not seen it properly. His line of sight's been blocked or something like that. But I think what you touched on there, Calvin, is the frustration side of stuff, and you can well believe at that point of the game why they'd be frustrated, because as I mentioned earlier, the Hearts players were time wasting for 40 minutes in, and even when we were down to 10 men, they're rolling about constantly, trying to stop the play. Craig Gordon's rolling about, and they're taking ages to take throw-ins and all the rest of it. If I'm on the park, I'm getting pissed off. And I think they actually did relatively well to keep the temperament, the Hibs players, at a decent level. But again, as I touched on Manuel, professional football player, you've got to be smart about these things. We've got a young squad, right? I think you've got to have to accept there's going to be a wee bit of hot-headedness in these situations, but that's for Maloney to manage, and that's for the players to be professional. It's a big occasion. You're in the semi-final, it's at Hampden, it's a lot riding on, it's the last game that means something of the season, really, unless we get trapped into a relegation battle, which, touch wood, we didn't. I think they just, again, need to be a bit smarter about things.
I agree. I think the one positive on that is that's the first time I've really seen Josh Campbell do anything like that, where he is willing to make a tackle like that. And I think if he can pull that off more often, I think people might win round to him. Because, he is young. He's played a lot of football this season, and he hasn't let it up. Like, he had that good game against Rangers in the semi-final, but I think if he can do more of the tackles like that show that he's willing to put his heart in his sleeve, then I'm all right with him making tackles, as long as he doesn't get sent off. Because I think our discipline this season, Calvin, me and you have both said it on the podcast a couple of times, it's been shocking this year. Like, how many red cards is that we're up to now? I know we're bottom of the
11 red cards this season.
Like, we're bottom of the discipline league in the Premiership. Like, it's just, that's not what you want to see with Hibs. Like, we are usually a get the ball down and play football team. We're not a team full of thugs, but we do seem to lose sort of that temper a wee bit too easy this season, and I don't know what that is. I don't know what's brought that on, but I'd like to see us sort of steer clear of that for the rest of the season, because we can't afford to lose any more players, especially with the injuries and all that.
In my opinion, it's simple for the reasons. Well, I think there's two here. I think some of those red cards shouldn't have been red cards, right? There's been incidents we know, you can argue either way, I suppose, but I think there's been a few that shouldn't have been. But the way that we've been playing, and how we constantly lose the ball. That is why, because we can't keep. We've played so many games, we can't string 2 passes together. We lose the ball, so the player's second touch is a tackle, and I think that's where the lack of discipline or the increase of fouls and bookings and red cards comes from, because 9 times out of 10 we get the ball, we pass it once or twice, we lose it, and then we're having to tackle again constantly. Our possession stats haven't been great, and I think it's just the nature of football. You're going to have to tackle more to get the ball back if you continuously lose it.
I think as well, even the experience in our team, like McGregor in that this year, like he's been sent off several times. I think that sort of epitomised when we were at you probably hear the dog barking in the background. But when we were at the Livingston away, the day that Jack Ross got beat, that was 2 red cards that night as well, and it's like it's been the story of the season.
It was the captain and the vice captain that got sent off.
Slot us down severely.
Aye, definitely. Well, I think after the game, obviously the usual post-match interviews came out, and the first one I've seen since that was Stevenson's one. I sort of let them come out, and I didn't really bother watching them until earlier today. And Stevenson was the first one that I seen, and I thought he'd come out and he looked like he wanted to cry. I think it meant that much to him that we've been beaten in a national semi-final against Hearts again. So, Gordon, what does that say to you about Stevenson as a Hibs player, that he's willing to look that upset in an interview?
I could sit here waxing lyrical about Stevenson all day. I think he's absolutely epitomises what Hibs are all about. He's been there for how many years? He's been here for like many years, and he gives 110%. I remember saying after the 3-1 game at Tynecastle, he was sat on the bench when we went 3-1 down, and there was no fight at all in that team. He was sat there and never came on, and I'm like, and they brought Josh Campbell and when Dre White went off injured, and I was like, what? Why? Like every time Stevenson's played in centre mid, he's been brilliant like this season. And you can argue he's a left back, but he started off as a midfielder. We all ken that, and I think a lot of the time he's been forced to play left back through seasons because we've never been able to find a replacement left back. He's more than capable of playing midfield. He showed that on Saturday. He was absolutely outstanding. He was everywhere. And for our goal, it was him that made it. Like the pass for Henderson, you mentioned it, Charlie. The pass for Henderson was great over the top, but he had no right to win the ball. The Hearts player had it right at the edge of the box, and Stevenson just wouldn't let it go. He right at his heels, won the ball, played the ball in, and obviously a couple of ricochets. I think Joe Newell blocked the first shot, and then Cadden stuck it away. But if it wasn't for Stevenson's desire, if that was another player, maybe even Josh Doig, like he is good going forward, and he's got a lot to learn. I didn't think he gives the Hearts player that much problem that Stevenson gave him. I didn't think we scored that goal. And I thought it was bizarre, and everybody around me in the stand thought it was bizarre when they took him off. I was like, what? Why are you taking him off? And I think his interview after it, like you said, Charlie, looked like he was about to greet, and he's gave everything to this club. He's gave everything in that game, and he deserves more, to be honest. And I think a lot of his teammates are letting him down a wee bit.
So Jack's managed to jump back on. So Calvin, I'll come to you, mate. Obviously, you've heard Lewis Stevenson's interview, and you know it's a different interview than what Paul Hanlon came out and said after the game last week. So, Calvin, what does that mean to you that Stevenson's willing to be that emotional in an interview? Do you think Maloney should look at giving the captaincy to Stevenson?
I don't think captaincy is necessary. I feel like, for me, like I said, I think Porteous is probably a good shout for captain, just in terms of longevity. But I feel like Stevenson, I do love Stevenson. Obviously, he's like as Mr. Hibs and things like that. And I think it's good for him to be emotional. But at the end of the day, I mean, it's for me, I get disappointed because it's 2 defeats from Hearts and twice in a week. And I think if we had played them next week, they beat us as well. I think that's a sad thing. I think that I'm a bit fed up, especially in Maloney's interviews as well. Like, I find them really bizarre. It's good for Stevenson to be hurting and be emotional, but he's just like the rest of us. Do you know what I mean? We're all hurting, and I feel like every fan's quite emotional. I feel like it's quite hard I found it quite hard in the last 24 to 48 hours to sort of decompartmentalise the defeats. Because you look at that 5-1 defeat for me, and that's Hibs versus Hearts. And you look at the other defeats, the defeat last year, the 4-0 a couple of years before that in the semi-final. You look at the 2-1 in the semi-final last year. You look at the 2-1 in the semi-final this year. And it's like, it's difficult not to hold that against like the current regime. Like the failures of the past Hibs teams, it's hard not to hold that because like the fans have been there throughout it all. And I know Stevenson's been there throughout all them as well. So I know he'll be feeling just as upset as us. But I think my point kind of makes sense. I'm just saying that I'm a wee bit too emotional to sort of comment on how he's feeling because myself, I'm feeling pretty pissed off with it all. And I'm sick of getting beat by them in like every sort of major competition or league games and all that. Like I feel like going a full season without beating Hearts is a failure of a season regardless.
No, I agree, mate. I think it's obviously good that he didn't say the same thing that Paul Hanlon felt, that we want to fuel this hurt, because that's a powder puff interview, and I would say the same if it was any other player. Just because it's Hanlon, it doesn't mean that he's getting preferential dish treatment for me, because I think that's a shocking interview. But I was happy with Stevenson's interview. I think he obviously was upset, and I think it's all right to be upset after you lose a derby. Like, it's good. And I think, like I said last week, the one thing that'll show that they're upset is if they put it right next time. Like, next time we play them, we need to beat them now. Like, we say that every time, but it's true. Like, we can't go, and they've got their famous like 22 in a row. They've won, 9 in a row against us before. Like, we can't let them get back to the stage where they are the dominant team. Obviously, their records show that they're the dominant team in the city, but what have you? So, Jack, I'll come to you about Maloney's interview then, before we move on past the game. So, obviously, Sean Maloney has come out after 2 defeats in 2 weeks. Not a great record against Hearts so far. Played 3, lost 2, draw 1. So, Jack, what did you think of his interview?
I thought it was better than the last one, to be honest, but I still don't think it was great, if you see what I mean. I think for me, there's certain things that managers need to say, and I think it's always tough after you lose a derby. I don't think any of us can look at losing a derby objectively, even somebody like myself, who tends to look at things from a more, I'd like to say, balanced point of view. It's hard to look at a derby objectively. And like, I just looked at it and thought, Sean, you may as well have not said anything if you came. What I mean, like, I know he's got to say something. But I think some of the stuff he says, it just seems to me quite apathetic, if you see what I mean. Like, he doesn't really seem to be that bothered. Like, if we lost a derby under Neil Lennon or even under Jack Ross, they used to come out and say, like, well, this is what went wrong, and I'm annoyed at this, or I'm annoyed at the team, or whatever. I think that you get that, Neil Lennon especially, and I think that's what Maloney's got to say. He say, I'm annoyed that this went wrong, I'm annoyed that that went wrong. No sort of making these sort of general statements for me. That's the sort of thing. And I know, like, he's obviously doesn't want to like absolutely blast the team because we've got a big 5 games coming up. Because, at the end of the day, we could be looking at the playoffs, which is a position we do not want to be in at all. But I think for me, like, Maloney, I just think he's not used to all this. Like Jack Ross, Neil Lennon, they knew what it was like to lose big games, if you see what I mean. So they knew what to sort of say. Like, Maloney's not really had that responsibility before as the Belgium assistant. That whenever you lose a big game like that, he doesn't really know what responsibility is and what to say. Because unfortunately right now, obviously the fans are hurting a lot, and obviously Valerio came out and said stuff as well that landed him a lot of criticism. So I think for me, the coaching staff maybe just needed to sit and maybe do a collective statement instead of Sean saying one thing and Valerio saying one thing as well. And I'm not, by no means am I wanting to criticise or lambast or anything like that, because I think at the end of the day, I'd never want to be in their position, and you don't know what to say as a coach after you've lost 2 derbies in a row. I mean, it's not great when it's your first big gig in management and you've lost 2 of the biggest fixtures your team's ever going to play in a row. So I think it's tough, but at the same time, I think Maloney's interview, it was better than the last one, but could still be put down as I could do better for me.
Definitely. Gordon, I'll come to you. So obviously there's been a lot of talk after the past, 4 months that Maloney's been in charge. Where do you sort of land on the Maloney experiment? Do you think we need to keep him? Do you think we should sack him? Where are you landing on that?
I have been a big advocate of it since he came in. I think he has a lot of good ideas. That has been waning more recently, for sure. I think I've been slowly starting to question if he is going to be any sort of success. But that being said, I do think we should be keeping him. Give him the summer, see what he can do. It's a big gamble, I get it, right? But how many, we can't keep changing managers all the time, constantly recycling and going through the same rigmarole and rebuilding squads, because we'll never get anywhere. It doesn't work. I'm quite big on giving managers chances. We've seen it so many times in the past and in all different leagues, but managers have been emptied far too early. I'm still angry about Soze getting the sack.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just, I think you can see what he's trying to do, and you can see that there's stuff there that, if you can, it's an obvious comparison, but you can compare him to when Butcher was in charge. There was nothing. You couldn't see anything on the park that was coming. We were just in complete disarray, free fall. We couldn't see any light at the end of the tunnel. It's not like that way. And I have seen on Twitter people comparing him, because comparing his records so far to Butcher's one and all the rest of it, different leagues. Well, it's the same league, but you know what I mean, like different teams around that are in the league. There's so many different variables compared to that. And like I say, when you watch the team, you can see that what he's trying to do, and it's almost like it needs a couple of things to click. And when they click, I think we're maybe onto something good. And maybe that's me being a wee bit too optimistic, but I think if he gets a good summer and a big summer and he's backed and he gets the players in, because like for what I've seen, there's rumblings of him going after some pretty tasty players potentially. He gets them in, he gets the right signings, then I think he's onto something good, because you know, our recruitment recently has been pretty poor. The whole Graham Maffrey thing, Jack Ross was kind of no thrown under the bus, but I think I've got a wee bit of sympathy for him because he didn't get the players in that he wanted to get in. If Maloney is backed by the club and gets the players in that he wants, again, I think we could be onto something half decent. I think we'll be much better next season. But who knows? It could go the complete opposite way, and we end up starting next season. He brings on all these hoodies, and it is. And I think you mentioned the word experiment. I think it is a bit of an experiment. He's never been a manager before, but Tony Mowbray, wasn't he? And look what he did. Granted, he had an amazing youth team came up, but we've got great youth players as well coming in. We've got Josh O'Connor and the boy Young, and all these development players that they signed. We do need to plan for the future, but it needs to be balanced out with decent players. So I'm all for giving him a shot in the summer, see how it goes between the summer and January, and I think that's where the proof will be in the pudding. Sacking him now isn't got a day or so any good. Who do you get in? I mean, we'll just end up being back to square one again, and it might just be the exact same shite.
Yeah, I totally agree, mate. Well, before we jump into the quiz, I'll give a quick brief review of the Rangers game yesterday. It was disappointment number 2 of the weekend for Hibs. We went to Auchenhowie, played the Rangers, half-time 0-0, full-time 5-0 Rangers. Not great. 3 unflattering scorelines in a row. Been beat 4-0 Celtic, then got dumped out of the cup of Partick, and now been beat 5-0 off Rangers. So it's not looking pretty for Hibs women, but it looks like we're almost too far out in front and fourth to worry about the team in 5th, Aberdeen, catching us. So obviously injuries and thin squad came into play yesterday, but ultimately 5-0 loss. So that's how it ended for Hibs this weekend. Two defeats, unfortunately. So we'll move on into the quiz now. And so Gordon, I'm sure you'll know how this works, mate. We've got 3 questions on the men, 3 on the women. So I'll start number 1, and Calvin, I'll come to you first, mate. The first question is, how many derbies did Frank Soze go unbeaten in at Hibs?
I reckon 3.
Okay, Jack, how many derbies did Frank Soze go unbeaten in at Hibs?
Before my time, they say, but I'm just going to take a stab at it and say 4.
Gordon?
I didn't think he was there long enough to have 3 or 4 games against Hearts. If I remember right.
Actually, that's very true.
Oh God!
I'm trying to think back. I'm going to say 1.
Well, I can reveal that you're miles off for 3 years. It's actually 9. Because he was there for, I think, 3 or 4 seasons, and 9, including when he managed us as well. So,
all right, I thought it was just managing.
No. And playing and managing. I probably should have said that. Apologies. Anyway, moving on to number 2. Jack, up to you first. How many non-UK squad members the Hibs have this season, not including those on loan? So in the current squad right now, how many are non-UK?
Right, okay. So this is just like this is first team squad, eh?
First team squad.
So the boys to the B team didn't count?
No.
Right, so I'm going to need to sort of count this up here. Right, I'm going to just go for it, right? I'm going to say non-UK squad members in the first team. We have, I want to say 3: Mueller, Melkerson, and Rocky.
Gordon, I'll come to you.
I've been trying to count them in my head as well. I think you're no far off, Jack. I'm going to go, and I can't remember who the 4th one would be, but I'm going to go 4.
I've just from no.
And Calvin, I'll come to you next.
I think it's more. I'm thinking it's 8. I think you've got Mueller, Melkerson, Hauger, Dabrowski's Polish, isn't he?
Mm-hmm.
Jake Del Hayes is Irish. That's 5.
Oh God.
Calvin, you're right. It is 8. It is 8. I'll run through them. So you've got Chris Mueller.
Is it 8?
Aye. Jasper's Bulgarian. Dabrowski.
I never said Jasper.
Well, no,
UEFA.
I thought Jasper was English.
No. You've
It's
got
the UEFA. Going by your UEFA nation.
Dabrowski, who's Polish. Jake Dalhay's Irish. Hauga, Norwegian. Rocky's Belgian. Melkerson, Norwegian, and Del Ferrier, who is a registered first team player, is Belgian too. So 8. You're right, Calvin. So you're 1 up. So Calvin, coming to you first for this one. Who scored the 6th goal when Hibs beat Hearts 6-2?
Latape.
Jack?
Who scored the 6th goal?
Yes.
I think it's Latape, is it no?
Gordon?
I think it's Latape too. Is that like one of the best goals ever? But was that maybe the 5th?
That was indeed the 6th. That was the 6th goal. So it was 6-1 at the time. So Calvin, you're on 2. Jack, you're on 1. Gordon, you're on 1. So moving on to the women's ones. Jack, coming to you first on this one. When Hibs won the SWPL League Cup in 2011, who did they beat?
Oh, that's a bit before the time I started following them, eh? Right, it's got to be one of the bigger teams, eh? I'll go say I'll go take a random guess. Say Glasgow City.
Gordon.
I would have said Glasgow City as well. I guess.
Alvin.
I'd just say Glasgow City as well, yeah.
Well, you're wrong. They beat Spartans 5-2.
There you go.
So still 2-1-1 in the favour of Calvin. So next question, Jack, coming to you first this time. Oh no, sorry, I came first to you last time. Gordon, came in first to you. How many players did the women's team have on loan this season?
Well, I know that there's quite a big rebuild, didn't they, when Dean came in, because a lot of players left. And I know they've got quite a few following on social media. I must admit, I didn't follow the women's team hugely, but quite a few, maybe 6.
Calvin?
I thought, well, some of them came back from being on loan like that, Rio and that. So I'm thinking it might be something like 4 or
Jack?
3. I'll say 3.
Think we have got, it's only the one just now. I think it's Eve Donald at Glasgow Women.
We've got 3 on loan. Calvin, you take your lead and you stretch it further. We've got Jenna Fife, we've got Lucy Ronald and Eve Donald.
Jenna Fife? I thought we...
According to Wikipedia, mate, she's out on loan.
Jenna Fife's not on loan. I mean, Calvin would have been right anyway because he got the nearest, but Jenna Fife, she went to Rangers, no on loan.
Oh, my bad.
I forgot about Lucy Ronald. But Jenna Fife went to Rangers permanently.
Didn't copy Wikipedia's answers for your things, is what I've learned here. And last question, Calvin, starting with you. Who is the longest serving Hibs women's team manager?
Chris, I only off.
Before you answer that, Calvin, I just looked up at the Wikipedia. Jack, does Sophie Allison ring a bell?
She got released. She doesn't play football anymore.
Wikipedia's wrong again. Anyway, go back to you, Calvin.
The only Hibs women manager I know is Dean, so I've got to say Dean. That's all I can.
Jack?
See, now, this is a difficult one. I want to say Grant Scott. I know that's probably wrong, but I want to know because Grant's the only manager I ever knew for the whole time, like me following the teams. Grant was in for quite a wee while, so I'm going to go and say Grant Scott.
Grant. And Gordon?
Was he, Jack, was he the one that was before Dean that had the
he's one before
bald heads? He was there quite a while, so I'll go with Scott as well. Or Scott.
I can reveal you're all wrong. It's actually Chris Roberts.
I'll just copy Jack.
Chris Roberts, who was there for 3 years. Grant Scott was only there 1 year. Kevin Milne 1 year. Willie Kirk 2 years, and Dean's been there 2 years as well, so he'll be the longest serving. So Chris Roberts, 2014 to 2017. So
I thought Grant was around a lot longer than that.
Calvin, you won the quiz.
Hey,
with 2 points. Jack, you got one. Gordon, you got one as well. So that brings us to the end of episode 65. We'll be back on Thursday to preview the first game of the bottom six, which is going to be a riveting success, hopefully. We'll really push for the European places being down there. So until next time, come on the Hibs.